mean, typically when there's a shooting like this in America, somewhere in America, a president will sort of rush for the first opportunity to comment on it. So I don't think it's unfair that people wondered why he didn't do that. That being said, I think you're completely right. He doesn't have anything to do with this particular case. What was striking there, I think what we just heard from him, is that he said something along the lines of journalists deserve to live, without fear of violence. And it was one of the only times I've actually heard him say something positive about journalists and people who cover the news, and that's since he's been president. We often hear the opposite from him, and that gets amplified by his supporters in a lot of ways, including some very violent ways for those of us who are on social media. But that was an instance, maybe the only instance I can recall, where he said something positive about what journalists do and what journalists should be able to expect as.
And I don't think anyone is blaming the president for what happened yesterday, but no one says he has anything to do with it. That guy clearly had a grudge against the paper for so long. But it's hard to see an attack on journalists like that and ignore the rhetoric we've seen toward journalists and journalism in general. And a lot of it does come from this White House regularly, from the president saying that the press is the enemy of the American people. They are not. Those two things can both be true, that the president had nothing to do with this, but also that the White House and the president of the United States should not be making remarks like that. So I think that is why people obviously brought up their rhetoric. Someone brought it up on the plane to the deputy press secretary saying this, because when they are saying that they are fake news, they are the enemy of the American people, these people were doing their jobs, editing stories, making sure the paper was ready to go out for today, and they were murdered in their newsroom. You cannot ignore the president's rhetoric in light of that.
I agree. I have a lot to add there. I mean, I'm concerned about the president's rhetoric with the media every day. Monday I was concerned about it. Today I'm concerned about it. I'll be concerned about it next week too. This shooting had nothing to do with it. The rhetoric is still deeply, deeply problematic, and I would argue anti-democratic.
And perhaps he'll learn a lesson. Perhaps he'll learn a lesson here. We're going to interrupt this conversation because we're following some other breaking